Some mistakes cost you everything. Mine? It cost me my freedom, my future, and almost my life. The night I saved a dying man in a five-star Manhattan restaurant, I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't know he was the patriarch of the city's most dangerous crime family. I didn't know his son would own me with a single signature. And I definitely didn't know I was carrying the heir to an empire built on blood. My name is Amara Cole, and this is how I became the queen of the underworld. If you want to see how far this story goes, hit that like button and comment your city below. Now let me take you back to where it all began. The crystal chandeliers of Luminaire cast fractured rainbows across white tablecloths, each one worth more than my monthly rent. I moved through the dining room like a ghost, seen but never noticed, just another black waitress in a world where people like me only existed to serve. "Table 12 needs water," Marcus hissed as he passed, his tray balanced with practiced ease. "And for God's sake, smile. These people tip better when you look grateful." I swallowed the response burning on my tongue and grabbed a pitcher. Grateful. Right. Grateful for the privilege of working 16-hour shifts while studying for the MCATs on stolen moments of sleep. Grateful for the apartment in Queens with the broken heating and the landlord who looked at me like I was already late on rent. But I smiled anyway. Because that's what survival looked like at 24. Table 12 was occupied by a couple who never once glanced up from their phones as I filled their glasses. The woman's diamond bracelet caught the light, probably worth more than my student loans. I wondered if she knew, if any of them knew what it felt like to choose between textbooks and groceries. "Amara," Chef Laurent's voice crackled through my earpiece. "VIP section needs coverage. Bethany called in sick." Of course she did. Bethany always called in sick on Friday nights when the tips were best. The VIP section occupied the entire eastern wall, separated from the main dining room by frosted glass panels etched with cherry blossoms. Here, Manhattan's elite conducted business over 30-year-old Scotch and Wagyu beef that cost more per ounce than gold. I pushed through the glass doors and immediately felt the shift in atmosphere. The air was thicker here, weighted with power and secrets. Conversations happened in murmurs, handshakes sealed deals worth millions, and everyone knew everyone's net worth down to the decimal. Finally, Bradley, the VIP section manager, snapped his fingers at me like I was a dog. "Table 7, the Castellanos. Do not screw this up." I approached Table 7 with my professional smile locked in place. The Castellanos, real estate moguls who owned half of Brooklyn, Mrs. Castellano barely acknowledged my existence as she ordered the most expensive wine on the menu, her words directed at the air 6 inches to my left. This was my life. Invisible until needed, disposable once the check was paid. I was refilling champagne flutes at Table 9 when I heard it, a sound that didn't belong in Luminaire's carefully orchestrated symphony of wealth. A crash, shattering glass, then a wet, gasping cough that made my medical student instincts flare. Everyone in the VIP section froze, their conversations hanging in mid-sentence. At Table 5, an elderly Asian man was slumped in his chair, his crisp white shirt now drenched in deep red wine. The glass had fallen from his trembling hands, its contents spreading across the tablecloth like blood. But it was his face that stopped my heart. Gray. Lips tinged blue, eyes rolling back. "Someone help him!" I didn't realize I'd spoken until heads turned toward me. His dinner companion, a younger man in an expensive suit, had gone pale, phone clutched uselessly in his hand. Nobody moved. They just stared, calculating, weighing the social cost of involvement against the inconvenience of a scene. I watched them make their choice in real time, watched them look away, return to their conversations, pretend they hadn't seen. And I felt something crack inside my chest. My feet were moving before my brain caught up. I dropped to my knees beside the old man, my hands already checking his pulse. Rapid, thready, barely there. "Sir, can you hear me?" His eyes focused on mine for just a moment, pupils blown wide with panic. He was trying to speak, his lips forming words that wouldn't come. "Don't try to talk, I'm here. You're going to be okay." The lie came easily, automatic. His pulse was deteriorating fast. "What are you doing?" Bradley's voice was ice. "Step away from the table. Hey, he needs help, and we've called 911. That's what we pay them for. You are a waitress, not a doctor. Back to your station. Now. The old man's hand shot out and gripped my wrist with surprising strength. His eyes locked onto mine, desperate and drowning. In that moment, I stopped seeing a stranger. I saw my grandfather in his final days, alone in a hospital where the nurses were too busy to hold his hand, where I'd been too buried in exams to visit. I'd failed him. I wouldn't fail this man. I'm not leaving, I said quietly. Bradley's face went purple. You're fired. Then I'm fired. I turned back to the old man, blocking out Bradley's sputtering threats. Medical school had taught me to assess and act. His breathing was labored but not obstructed. Pulse weak but present. No signs of choking or stroke, but something was very wrong. Gwentanayo, I whispered in Korean, one of the 5 languages I'd taught myself during long subway rides and lonely nights. It's okay. Som suiseo, chonchoni. Breathe slowly. His eyes went wide. The panic bled from his face, replaced by something I couldn't read. Shock. Recognition. Fear. And then, impossibly, he began to calm. His breathing steadied. Color seeped back into his lips. The death grip on my wrist loosened into something almost gentle. Yomioni norai, he whispered, his voice like dried leaves. Mother's song. I bowed my head in the traditional Korean gesture of respect, my forehead nearly touching our clasped hands. Abeoji, Gwenchanayo. Father, you're safe. A tear slid down his weathered cheek. The VIP section had gone completely silent. I could feel their stares like physical weight, but I didn't care. This man, whoever he was breathing, living. That was all that mattered. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Amara. Bradley's voice had lost its edge, replaced by something that sounded almost like fear. You need to move, now. Not until the paramedics arrive. You don't understand. The glass doors exploded inward. Not literally, but that's what it felt like when he entered. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Conversations didn't just stop. They died mid-syllable. Even the ambient music seemed to fade, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. He was tall, 6'3", maybe more, with the kind of presence that made everyone else look like poorly rendered NPCs. Dark hair cut with military precision. A charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. But it was his face that made my stomach drop. Beautiful. Brutal. Like a Renaissance painting of a fallen angel. And his eyes, ice blue and utterly empty, swept across the room with the casual assessment of a predator counting prey. Every person in the VIP section had the same reaction. They looked down, away, anywhere but at him, because they knew, whatever he was, whoever he was, you didn't make eye contact unless you wanted to be remembered. And being remembered by this man was not a gift. He moved through the room like Moses parting the Red Sea. People physically leaned away as he passed, creating a corridor of empty space that led directly to table 5, directly to me. I should have moved. Every instinct screamed at me to get out of his path, to make myself small and invisible like everyone else. But I was still kneeling beside the old man, his hand still clasped in mine, and I'd meant what I'd said. I wasn't leaving. The man stopped 3 feet away. This close, I could see the details, the small scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the way his jaw clenched and unclenched, a muscle ticking beneath skin that had probably never known a blemish. The absolute stillness of someone who'd learned that movement was wasted energy. Move. His voice was quiet, controlled, terrifying. No. The word hung between us like a thrown gauntlet. His eyes finally focused on me, really saw me. And in that moment, I understood why everyone else had looked away. Because those eyes weren't empty. They were full, of violence barely leashed, of power that didn't need to be announced, of a cold intelligence that calculated angles and outcomes faster than most people could blink. Looking into them was like looking into a shark tank. Beautiful, mesmerizing, fatal. I wasn't asking. And I wasn't answering a question. My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. This man needs medical attention. The paramedics are almost here. I'm not leaving him. Something flickered in those ice blue eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition of a kind of stupidity he'd thought extinct. Do you know who I am? No? Do you know who he is? I gestured to the old man, because right now he's someone who was choking alone while a room full of people pretended not to notice. So whoever you are, you can wait 3 minutes. The silence that followed could have bent steel. Then, impossibly, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, more like the ghost of an expression he'd buried years ago. Father, he said it quietly, reverently, and dropped to one knee beside me. Oh no. What happened? His hands hovered over the old man, not quite touching, as if afraid his fingers might shatter something precious. He was choking, I think, or having some kind of episode. His pulse was thready, breathing labored, but it's stabilizing now. I fell into clinical mode, the medical student in me taking over. No signs of stroke, pupils reactive. He calmed when I spoke to him in Korean. Those ice blue eyes snapped to mine. You speak Korean. 5 languages, actually, helps with the tips. The joke fell flat in the charged air. What did you say to him? That he was safe. That everything would be okay. I hesitated. He said something back, Mother's song. The man's entire body went rigid. For a moment I thought he might shatter, just crack apart like stressed glass. Then he was moving, scooping the old man into his arms with a gentleness that contradicted everything about him. Eomeoni, the old man whispered, his hand reaching up to touch his son's face. Mother. Alayo abeoji. I know, Father. The man's voice broke on the words just for a second before that iron control slammed back into place. Gugubchaga wasoyo. The ambulance is here. Paramedics burst through the doors, professional and efficient. The man transferred his father to their care with visible reluctance, his hand lingering on the old man's shoulder. Roosevelt Hospital, he ordered. Not requested. Ordered. Private suite. Dr. Chen. No one else touches him. The lead paramedic, a woman who looked like she'd seen everything twice, nodded without argument. Yes, Mr. Cade. Cade. The name detonated in my brain like a grenade. Ronan Cade, the Ronan Cade, Manhattan's most notorious crime lord, the man who owned half the city's underground and most of its above ground, too. The boogeyman that prosecutors whispered about in sealed courtrooms and journalists didn't name in print unless they had excellent life insurance. And I just told him to wait. My legs decided this was an excellent time to stop working. I stayed kneeling on Luminaire's expensive carpet while my entire life flashed before my eyes. Short, boring, and about to end very badly. The paramedics wheeled the old man away, their movements quick but careful. Ronan Cade watched until they disappeared through the doors, his face an unreadable mask. Then he turned back to me. Stand up. It wasn't a suggestion. I stood. My knees shook, but I locked them. I'd come this far. Might as well die on my feet. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze traveling from my scuffed work shoes to the wild curls I'd tried to tame into a professional bun. Taking inventory. Assessing value. What's your name? Amara. Amara Cole. Medical student? I blinked. How did you the way you assessed him? Clinical. Confident. He stepped closer, and I caught his scent. Something expensive and woody that probably cost more per ounce than my rent. Why aren't you in medical school right now? Money, student loans, the usual American dream turned nightmare. The words came out before I could stop them. Apparently facing certain death had broken my filter. You're studying while working here. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. 16-hour shifts, 4 hours of sleep, whatever time is left for books, living the dream. His eyes narrowed. You could have ignored him, like everyone else. No, I couldn't. Why not? Because I'd ignored my grandfather's calls when I was cramming for finals. Because I'd chosen organic chemistry over his birthday, pharmacology over his last Christmas. Because when he died, alone in a hospital room, I'd been too busy memorizing the Krebs cycle to say goodbye. Because someone should have helped, I said simply. Ronan Cade stared at me for another long moment. Then he reached into his jacket, I definitely didn't flinch, and pulled out a business card. Thick, cream-colored paper with embossed letters that probably cost more than my textbooks. Roosevelt Hospital. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Ask for me at the private wing. I took the card with numb fingers. Why? Because my father's life is worth more than your pride, and because you're the first person in 5 years who's spoken to him in our mother's tongue. His voice went very soft, very dangerous. Don't be late, Miss Cole. I don't offer twice. Then he was gone, sweeping out of the VIP section with the same controlled violence he'd brought in. The glass doors closed behind him, and the room exhaled as one. I stood there holding a business card that felt like a ticking bomb, while my brain tried to process what had just happened. Amara. Bradley appeared at my elbow, his face the color of spoiled milk. We need to talk. In my office. Now. I followed him in a daze through the main dining room where everyone was suddenly very interested in their food, down a narrow hallway to his cluttered office. He closed the door, locked it. Do you have any idea what you just did? Saved a man's life? You interfered with Ronan Cade's father. You spoke to Ronan Cade. He grabbed his hair with both hands. You should be dead right now. Do you understand that? Dead. Or worse. But I'm not. No, you're not. Which means he wants something from you. Bradley's hands were shaking, and when men like Ronan Cade want something, they take it. Doesn't matter what you think. Doesn't matter what you want. Cold dread pooled in my stomach. What are you saying? I'm saying go home. Pack a bag. Leave the city. Tonight. Don't go to that hospital. Don't answer his calls. Just disappear. I can't just... Yes, you can. He pulled an envelope from his desk drawer, stuffed with cash. Your last paycheck plus severance. It's enough to get you to Boston. Maybe Chicago if you bus. I stared at the envelope, at the money that could save me, at the escape route being handed to me on a silver platter. Then I thought about the old man's face, the way he'd calmed when I spoke Korean, the tear that had slid down his weathered cheek. Mother's song. I can't, I said quietly. Amara. He was alone, Bradley. Dying and alone while a room full of people looked away. I can't just leave him like that. He's not your responsibility. Maybe not, but he's someone's father, someone's grandfather, and if there's even a chance I can help, I tucked the business card into my pocket. I have to try. Bradley slumped into his chair, suddenly looking a decade older. You're a fool. Probably. I managed a weak smile. But at least I'll be a fool who can sleep at night. I left Luminaire through the back entrance, into an alley that smelled like garbage and broken dreams. The November air bit through my thin jacket, but I barely felt it. My phone buzzed. A text from my roommate, Jenna. Late shift again? Pizza's in the fridge. Don't forget you have biochem midterm Monday. Right. The midterm. My life. Reality. I should go home. Should take Bradley's money and his advice and run as far as my student loan debt would carry me. Instead, I pulled out Ronan Cade's business card and stared at the embossed letters in the streetlight. Cade Industries. Ronan Cade, CEO. And below, in smaller text, some debts can only be paid in blood. I shivered. Not from the cold. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., I would walk into Roosevelt Hospital and meet the most dangerous man in Manhattan. I would step into a world that people like me only saw in movies. A world of power and violence where the rules were written in bodies and broken promises. Every rational bone in my body screamed that this was a mistake, that I should listen to Bradley, take the money, and disappear. But as I walked toward the subway, the old man's face haunted me. The desperate grip of his hand. The way he'd whispered Mother's song like it was a prayer and a memory wrapped in one. Someone had taught him that phrase. Someone he'd loved and lost. And maybe, just maybe, I could help him find his way back. Even if it cost me everything. The subway ride home was a blur of harsh fluorescent lights and strangers' faces. I sat crushed between a man who smelled like stale beer and a woman whose shopping bags dug into my ribs, but I barely noticed. My mind kept circling back to the same question. What did Ronan Cade want from me? Medical students were a dime a dozen in New York. Hell, waitresses who spoke Korean were probably more common than I thought. So why specifically summon me to the hospital? Because you're the first person in 5 years who's spoken to him in our mother's tongue. Their mother was Korean, dead probably, based on the way the old man had reacted. And that phrase, mother's song, had broken something open in Ronan's carefully controlled facade. I pulled out my phone and did something monumentally stupid. I Googled Ronan Cade. The results made my blood run cold, suspected of orchestrating the Castellano family murders, connected to 14 unsolved homicides, believed to control Manhattan's underground gambling, drug distribution, and money laundering operations. Net worth estimated at $2.3 billion, most of it from legitimate real estate holdings that everyone knew were fronts. And the pictures. Dozens of them. Ronan Cade at charity galas in $1,000 tuxedos. Ronan Cade shaking hands with the mayor. Ronan Cade leaving court after another acquittal, his lawyers flanking him like an honor guard. In every single photo, his expression was exactly the same. Controlled, empty, dangerous. Except one. I zoomed in on a grainy image from what looked like a funeral. Ronan stood before a pair of caskets, his face turned slightly away from the camera, and in that unguarded moment I saw something that made my chest tight. Grief, raw and devastating. The caption read, Ronan Cade, 22. At the funeral of his mother, Sunmi Cade and brother Lucas Cade killed in a car accident 5 years ago. I stared at that photo until my eyes burned. At the young man who'd learned to bury emotion so deep that nothing showed on the surface. At the son who'd lost his mother and brother in one terrible night. The train lurched, announcing my stop. I stumbled onto the platform, legs stiff from the long shift, and climbed the stairs to street level. Queens at midnight looked like a different planet compared to Manhattan's glittering towers. Here, the American dream came in faded bodegas and rent-controlled apartments with bars on the windows. Here, people like me scraped by on minimum wage and student loans, counting pennies and hoping tomorrow would be different. My apartment building was a 4-story walk-up with a broken elevator and a landlord who answered repair requests with shrugs. I climbed to the 3rd floor, my feet screaming, and let myself into the tiny one-bedroom I shared with Jenna. There you are. Jenna looked up from her laptop, surrounded by empty coffee cups and medical textbooks. I was starting to think you'd been kidnapped. Long story. I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto our sagging couch. Well, I've got time. Professor Yang's pathology exam is going to kill me anyway. Might as well die entertained. She closed her laptop and turned to face me, tucking her legs underneath her. So, what happened? I told her. All of it. The old man, the VIP section's collective cowardice, Ronan Cade's appearance, and the business card currently burning a hole in my pocket. Jenna's eyes got wider with each sentence. Holy shit, she breathed when I finished. Amara, that's Ronan Cade, the Ronan Cade. I know. The guy who supposedly had that prosecutor's car bombed last year. I know. The guy whose enemies have a disturbing tendency to disappear into the Hudson River wearing concrete shoes. Jenna, you cannot go to that hospital. She grabbed my shoulders, her grip surprisingly strong for someone who lived on ramen and caffeine. Bradley's right. Pack a bag. We'll go to my parents' place in Vermont. You can transfer to UVM Medical School. I'm not running. Then you're insane. Probably. I met her eyes. But that old man, Jenna, you should have seen him. Everyone just looked away, like he was already dead and they didn't want to be inconvenienced by the cleanup. That's not your problem. Then whose problem is it? I pulled away, pacing our tiny living room. We're going to be doctors, Jen. We take an oath. Do no harm. How can I do that if I walk away from someone who needs help? The Hippocratic Oath doesn't include getting murdered by the mob. He's not going to murder me. You don't know that. She was right, I didn't. But something in my gut, the same instinct that had made me kneel beside a dying stranger, told me that Ronan Cade didn't want me dead. He wanted something else, something I couldn't name yet. I have to go, I said quietly, if only to find out what he wants. Jenna stared at me for a long moment, then sighed. You're really doing this? Yeah. Fine. But I'm going with you. Absolutely not. Non-negotiable, Amara. You want to walk into a lion's den? Fine. But you're not doing it alone. She stood, all 5'2" of her vibrating with determination. We're sisters, medical school survivors, roommates who've seen each other at our absolute worst. If you're going down, I'm going down with you. My throat went tight. Jenna, save it. We need a plan. She grabbed a notebook, the same one she used for pathology notes, and flipped to a blank page. First, we tell people where we're going. My parents, your aunt in Jersey, that weird guy from pharmacology who's obsessed with you. David is not obsessed. Second, we go in together. No splitting up, no wandering off alone. This isn't a horror movie. With Ronan Cade? It might as well be. She scribbled notes in her terrible handwriting. Third, we establish a safe word. If things go sideways, we bail. Immediately. Despite everything, I felt a smile tug at my lips. A safe word. Don't laugh. This is serious. I'm not laughing. I was a little, but it was better than crying. Okay, safe word. How about Vermont? Perfect. She added it to her list. Fourth, you're wearing something that doesn't scream broke med student. Ronan Cade is a billionaire. You show up in scrubs, he'll think you're the help. I am the help. Not tomorrow. You're not. Tomorrow, you're Amara Cole, medical student and badass who saved his father's life. You're going to walk in there with your head up and make him remember that he owes you. I looked at my best friend, this fierce, brilliant woman who'd held my hair when I was sick, quizzed me through organic chemistry, and never once made me feel less than, and felt something warm unfold in my chest. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet. We might both be dead by noon. But she hugged me tight, and for a moment I let myself believe everything would be okay. We stayed up until 3 a.m., planning and worrying in equal measure. Finally, Jenna fell asleep on the couch, her notebook still clutched in one hand. I covered her with a blanket and retreated to our shared bedroom. Sleep wouldn't come. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, while questions chased each other through my mind. Why had the old man responded so strongly to Korean? What was Mother's song? And why had Ronan looked at me like I was a ghost he'd been waiting 5 years to see? My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Car will pick you up at 9:30 a.m. Don't be late. RK. My heart hammered against my ribs. He had my number. Of course he did. Men like Ronan Cade didn't ask permission. They took what they needed and called it a courtesy. I should have been terrified. Should have taken Jenna's advice and run. Instead, I typed back, I'll be ready. His response came immediately. Good. I set the phone down with shaking hands and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, my life would change. I could feel it in my bones, in the nervous flutter of my pulse, in the way the city hummed outside my window. Tomorrow, I would walk into Ronan Cade's world. And something told me I wouldn't walk out the same person, if I walked out at all. But as I finally drifted into uneasy sleep, it wasn't fear that followed me into dreams. It was the memory of ice blue eyes and a voice that had broken on 2 words. I know, Father. Ronan Cade was dangerous, violent, everything I should run from, but he'd knelt beside his father with hands that trembled, had spoken Korean like a prayer, had looked at me like I held answers to questions he'd stopped asking years ago. And maybe, just maybe, that made him human. Even monsters, after all, started out as men. The black Mercedes arrived at exactly 9:30, idling at the curb like a sleek predator. Amara stood on the sidewalk in Jenna's best dress, a simple navy sheath that actually fit, and wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Last chance to run, Jenna whispered beside her, clutching her purse so hard her knuckles had gone white. Too late for that. The driver emerged, a mountain of a man in a dark suit who moved with the efficient grace of someone trained to kill. He opened the rear door without a word, his face expressionless. Amara climbed in, Jenna scrambling after her. The interior smelled like leather and money, all dark wood accents and seats that probably cost more than their entire apartment. A privacy screen separated them from the driver. The door closed with a sound like a bank vault ceiling. Roosevelt Hospital, the driver's voice crackled through a speaker. 30 minutes. Then silence. Jenna grabbed Amara's hand, squeezing tight. Neither of them spoke as the Mercedes glided through Queens, crossing the bridge, into Manhattan. The city transformed around them, from faded bodegas to gleaming towers, from survival to excess in the span of a few miles. Roosevelt Hospital rose against the gray November sky like a monument to suffering and salvation. The private wing occupied the top 3 floors, accessible only by a separate elevator that required a key card. The driver produced one without being asked. Top floor, Mr. Cade is expecting you. The elevator was all mirrors and soft lighting, designed to make you feel smaller with every floor. Amara watched her reflection multiply into infinity, a black girl from Queens in a borrowed dress, pretending she belonged in a world that had never wanted her. "We can still leave," Jenna whispered. "Just hit the emergency stop." The doors opened. The top floor didn't look like a hospital. It looked like a luxury hotel, all hardwood floors and original artwork, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. A woman sat behind a reception desk, her beauty so perfect it seemed almost artificial. "Miss Cole?" Not a question. "Mr. Cade is in the family lounge. This way." She stood, her heels clicking on the hardwood, and led them down a corridor lined with black and white photographs. Amara recognized some of them: the Brooklyn Bridge at sunrise, Central Park in winter, the Manhattan skyline at dusk. All of them were places owned by Cade Industries. A reminder. A warning. The family lounge was larger than Amara's entire apartment, decorated in shades of cream and gray with furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. But she barely noticed the decor, because Ronan Cade stood by the windows, silhouetted against the city he owned, and even his shadow seemed dangerous. He turned as they entered, and Amara felt that same jolt of recognition she'd experienced at Luminaire. Those ice-blue eyes found hers immediately, ignoring Jenna completely. "Miss Cole, you came. You didn't really give me a choice." The corner of his mouth twitched. "There's always a choice. You could have run. Most people would have." "I'm not most people." "No." He studied her for a long moment. "You're not." The silence stretched, weighted with things unsaid. Jenna shifted beside her, a subtle reminder of the safe word, of escape plans and common sense. "How is your father?" Amara asked. "Stable. The doctors say it was a panic attack triggered by a combination of medication and stress." Ronan moved away from the window, and she saw the exhaustion in the tightness around his eyes. "He hasn't had an episode like that in 3 years. I'm glad he's okay." "Are you?" The question was sharp, probing. "Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear?" "I don't know what you want to hear, Mr. Cade. I only know what's true." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe, or surprise. "Call me Ronan. Mr. Cade was my father. Your father has a name too. Jinsu Cade. Though he hasn't used it in public for 20 years. Ronan gestured to the seating area. "Sit, please." It wasn't really a request, but Amara sat anyway, Jenna practically plastered to her side. Ronan remained standing, a power play so obvious it was almost funny. "My father wants to meet you," he said. "Properly, to thank you for last night." "That's not necessary." "He insists. And what Jinsu Cade insists on, he gets." Ronan's voice went cold. "But before I take you to him, we need to establish some ground rules." Here it comes, Amara thought. The threat. The price. My father is not well. Physically, he's recovered from last night, but mentally, Ronan paused, choosing his words carefully. He lives in the past, specifically in the months before my mother and brother died. Sometimes he knows they're gone. Sometimes he forgets. And when he forgets, it destroys him all over again. Amara's chest tightened. That's why he reacted to the Korean. My mother spoke to him in Korean when he was upset. A specific phrase. Mother's song. Ronan's jaw clenched. "You said those exact words last night." "I didn't. I just responded to what he said." "I know." He moved closer, towering over her, "which is why I need to understand how you know that phrase. Who taught it to you?" "No one taught me. I studied Korean in college, and I've been practicing ever since. The phrase just came naturally, something respectful and calming." Amara met his gaze steadily. "I didn't know it had special meaning to your father." Ronan stared at her, searching for lies. Whatever he found seemed to satisfy him, because he finally nodded. "My father thinks you're a sign, that my mother sent you." His voice dripped with contempt. Whether for the belief or for himself, Amara couldn't tell. "He wants you to stay with him, to be his caretaker." The world tilted. What? He's fired 4 nurses in the past 2 months. Refuses to let anyone touch him, speak to him, even look at him for too long. But you... Ronan's expression was unreadable. He trusts you because you spoke our mother's words. I can't just... I have school, I have exams. You'll be compensated. $50,000 a month, plus room and board in the family penthouse. Jenna made a strangled noise. Amar's brain short-circuited. $50,000 a month. That was more than her mother made in a year. More than her student loans. More than she'd see in the next decade of medical school and residency combined. Why? The word came out hoarse. Because my father needs stability. Because you gave him something no one else could. A moment of peace. Ronan's voice softened just barely. And because I will do anything to keep him alive. There was the truth of it. Not kindness, not gratitude, just desperate, ruthless love for a dying man. I need to think about it. You have until you leave this hospital. Ronan checked his watch, probably worth more than her car. I'm offering you a way out of student debt, Miss Cole. A chance to actually become the doctor you're studying so hard to be. All you have to do is spend a few hours a day with an old man who thinks you're a miracle. And what do you think I am? The question hung between them like a challenge. Ronan smiled, a real smile this time, sharp and dangerous. I think you're someone who doesn't know when to run, which makes you either very brave or very stupid. Can it be both? It usually is. He extended his hand. Come, meet Jinsu properly, then decide if you can handle this world. Amar looked at his hand. Elegant fingers, calluses that suggested he knew how to fight, a scar across his palm that looked like a knife wound. The hand of a killer, probably. She took it anyway. Ronan's grip was warm, firm, and gone almost immediately. He led them down another corridor, past more photographs, more reminders of the empire built on blood and concrete. Jinsu's room was at the end of the hall, guarded by 2 men who made the driver look small. They stepped aside without a word as Ronan approached. He's awake, one of them said, asking for the girl. Then let's not disappoint him. The room beyond was a study in controlled luxury, medical equipment hidden behind tasteful panels, monitors disguised as artwork, enough flowers to supply a funeral home, and in the bed, propped up by silk pillows, sat Jinsu Kad. He looked smaller in daylight, more fragile, but his eyes, dark and sharp, were completely lucid. Adiul. His voice was stronger than last night. 그녀를 데려왔구나. Son. Who brought her? 물론이죠, 아버지. Ronan switched to Korean effortlessly. 그녀는 당신을 만나고 싶어 합니다. Of course, father. She wants to meet you. Jinsu's gaze found Amara, and his entire face transformed. 에오메오니의 노래를 부르는 아이, the child who sings mother's song. Amara stepped forward, Jenna's hand slipping from hers. She bowed deeply, the way she'd practiced in college Korean classes, forehead nearly parallel to the floor. 에오리우신, 만나서 반갑습니다. 제 이름은 Amara입니다. Honored elder, I'm pleased to meet you. My name is Amara. A tear slid down Jinsu's weathered cheek. Sonmiya? Sunmi? Ronan went rigid. 아버지 아니에요, 이 사람은... Father, no. This is... But Jinsu was already reaching for Amara, his hands trembling. Sonmi, 돌아왔구나. 내게 얼마나 기다렸는지. Sonmi, you came back. I waited so long. Amara's heart shattered. She understood now, the desperate hope in his eyes, the way he looked at her like she was salvation incarnate. He saw his dead wife, the woman who'd spoken Korean in moments of comfort, the ghost he'd been waiting 5 years to see. She should have pulled away, should have corrected him. Instead, she took his hands gently. 네, 여기 있어요. 걱정하지 마세요. Yes, I'm here, don't worry. Jinsu sobbed, a broken sound that seemed to crack the air itself. 미안해. 네오무 미안해. I'm sorry, so sorry. 괜찮아요. Amara kept her voice soft, soothing. 다 괜찮아요. It's okay. Everything is okay. She felt Ronan stare like a physical weight, but she didn't look away from Jinsu. This man, This father, who'd lost everything and couldn't let go, needed this moment more than she needed truth. Slowly, Jinsu's breathing calmed. His grip on her hands loosened, and when he looked at her again, clarity had returned to his eyes. "You're not her," he whispered in English. "But you sound like her." "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize." He patted her hand. "It's been so long since I heard Korean spoken with love. Everyone else, they say the words, but there's no heart. You have heart." Amara blinked back tears. "My grandfather spoke Korean. Before he died, I promised I'd learn, so his stories wouldn't die with him." "A good promise." Jinsu smiled, sad and knowing. "My son tells me you're a medical student." "Yes, sir." "And a waitress. Someone has to pay the bills." "Not anymore." Jinsu's voice gained strength. "Ronan told you my offer?" "He did, but I know what you're going to say. That you have school, responsibilities, a life that doesn't include babysitting a dying old man." Jinsu's eyes gleamed. "But consider this, Miss Cole. How many medical students graduate with no debt? How many start their careers free to choose their specialty based on passion instead of salary?" He was offering her everything she'd dreamed of, everything she'd sacrificed sleep and sanity and her entire 20s to achieve, and all she had to do was lie. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? Playing the ghost of a dead woman to comfort a man slipping into dementia, pretending to be something she wasn't for money. "I need time," she said quietly. "Of course. Take the day. Think about it." Jinsu released her hands. "But know this, I'm not asking you to pretend to be my wife. I'm asking you to be kind to an old man who's forgotten how to trust. That's all." Amara nodded, not trusting her voice. Ronan touched her elbow. "We should let him rest." They filed out, Jenna practically vibrating with unspoken questions. The door closed behind them with a soft click. "Well?" Ronan turned to face her, arms crossed. "What's your answer?" "I said I need time, and I'm saying you don't have it. My father made you an offer. Accept or decline, now." Anger flared hot in her chest. "You don't get to rush me into a decision that'll change my entire life." "Life changes whether you're ready or not, Miss Cole. I learned that when my mother's car was hit by a drunk driver. When I watched them lower 2 caskets into the ground. When my father looked at me like I was a stranger." Ronan stepped closer, and she smelled that expensive cologne again. "You want time to weigh pros and cons? Fine. Here they are. Pro, financial freedom. No more 16-hour shifts, no more choosing between textbooks and food. Con, you'll be living in a world you don't understand, surrounded by people who'd kill you for looking at them wrong. Is that a threat?" "It's a reality check." He pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed her the screen. It was a bank transfer, $50,000. Made out to Amara Cole. Her mouth went dry. "First month's pay," Ronan said. "Accept the offer. It's yours. Decline. And you walk away with nothing but a nice story about the night you saved a crime lord's father." Amara stared at the numbers, at the amount that would pay off her credit cards, cover her rent for a year, let her actually sleep instead of working herself to death. "This is insane," she whispered. "Welcome to my world." She looked at Jenna, who was shaking her head frantically, at the exit signs pointing toward escape, at the life she'd built from nothing and sacrifice and stubbornness. Then she looked at the door to Jinsu's room, at the man inside who'd cried at the sound of his native language, who'd lost his wife and son in sanity and was still fighting to find moments of peace. "I have conditions," she heard herself say. Ronan's eyebrows rose. "You're negotiating?" "You're damn right I'm negotiating. This is my life." She straightened her spine, channeling every ounce of her mother's strength. "I keep my apartment. I study when I need to. Exams and classes are non-negotiable. And Jenna comes with me." "What?" Jenna squeaked. "The penthouse has 12 bedrooms. Surely you can spare 2. Amara met Ronan's gaze without flinching. "I'm not doing this alone." A long silence. Then Ronan smiled, a real smile that actually reached his eyes. "Done. Anything else?" "I want it in writing, a contract, legal and binding." "Smart." He extended his hand again. We have a deal, Miss Cole. She took his hand and felt the world shift beneath her feet. Good. Pack your things. You move in tonight. Tonight? Amar's voice cracked. I can't just... Yes, you can. And you will. Ronan was already walking away, phone to his ear. Marcus, prepare the East Wing, 2 rooms, and send a car to Queens. Miss Cole's address is in the file. He had a file on her. Of course he did. The moment he disappeared around the corner, Jenna grabbed Amara's arm hard enough to bruise. What the hell just happened? I think I just sold my soul. For $50,000 a month, I'd sell mine too. Jenna's laugh was slightly hysterical. Oh God, we're moving in with the mob. He's not... Amara paused. Okay, he probably is, but his father needs help, and you can't walk away from someone who needs you. I know. Jenna hugged her tight. You're either the best person I've ever met or the dumbest. Maybe both. They left the hospital in the same Mercedes, the city rushing past in a blur of glass and steel. Amara kept touching her phone, refreshing her bank app, confirming that yes, $50,000 had actually appeared in her account. Blood money, probably. But it was also freedom, the kind she'd been chasing since her first day of medical school. Vermont, Jenna whispered. You remember the safe word, right? I remember. Good. Because something tells me we're going to need it. The penthouse occupied the top floor of a building in Tribeca, all glass walls and views that made you feel like you were floating above the city. The elevator required a key card, a fingerprint, and a 6-digit code. Overkill much? Jenna muttered. The doors opened directly into the apartment, because of course they did. No hallways, no neighbors, just 30,000 square feet of obscene luxury that made Amara's brain short-circuit. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Hudson River, furniture that belonged in design magazines, art that was probably worth more than her medical school tuition, and everywhere that same aesthetic, dark woods, cream walls, touches of gold that whispered money so old it didn't need to shout. A woman appeared from somewhere, elegant and professional. Miss Cole, I'm Helena, the house manager. Let me show you to your rooms. The East Wing, their wing, was larger than most apartments. 2 bedrooms connected by a shared living area, each with its own bathroom that had heated floors and a shower big enough for a party. Holy shit, Jenna breathed, running her hand over marble countertops. Mr. Cade asked me to inform you that dinner is at 7, Helena said. Dress code is smart casual. Your belongings from Queens will arrive within the hour. Then she was gone, leaving them alone in luxury neither of them knew how to process. Amara sank onto a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud and tried to remember how to breathe. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Baby, you haven't called in 3 days. Everything okay? Everything was not okay. Everything had turned into a fever dream of crime lords and contracts and more money than she'd ever seen. But she typed back, Fine, Mom. Just busy with school. Love you. The lie tasted bitter. Another text, this time from Ronan. My father wants to see you at 6. Don't be late. No, please. No, if you're available. Just expectations and authority. Amara had spent her entire life being told what to do by people who thought her time was worthless. Teachers who didn't believe she belonged in advanced classes, professors who questioned her place in medical school, customers who snapped their fingers like she was a trained dog. She'd survived by being smarter, working harder, and never backing down. But Ronan Cade wasn't a racist professor or a condescending customer. He was a man who could make her disappear with a phone call, and she'd just agreed to live in his home. At 5:30, she stood in front of her closet, which Helena had somehow already filled with clothes in her exact size, and tried to decide who she was supposed to be. The broke med student? The hired caretaker? The girl who'd stumbled into a world she didn't understand? She chose black pants and a simple white blouse, armor disguised as professionalism. Jenna appeared in the doorway, equally uncomfortable in new clothes. You ready for this? No, but when has that ever stopped me? Jinsu's room was in the west wing, past more artwork and empty spaces that echoed. 2 guards stood outside, different men, same dead eyes. They opened the door without a word. Jinsu sat in a leather armchair by the window, watching the sunset paint the river gold. He looked smaller here, more human than he had in the hospital. Amara, he smiled. You came. You asked me to. And you do everything you're asked? There was amusement in his voice. Not even close. Good. People who follow orders make poor companions. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. Tell me about yourself. So she did. About growing up in Queens with a single mother who worked 3 jobs. About her grandfather who'd immigrated from Korea with nothing but stories and stubbornness. About choosing medicine because she'd watched too many people die from poverty disguised as illness. Jin-soo listened without interrupting, his dark eyes sharp and present. You have fire, he said when she finished. My wife had that. Refused to let the world break her, even when it tried. His expression softened. Ronan takes after me, too cold, too controlled. Lucas was like his mother, warm, open, dead at 23. The grief in his voice made Amara's chest hurt. I'm sorry, she whispered. Everyone is sorry. Sorry doesn't bring them back. Jin-soo's hands trembled, but his voice stayed steady. Do you know why I really asked you here, Amara? To be your caretaker. To save my son. The words hung in the air like a confession. I don't understand. Ronan is dying. Not physically, but here. Jin-soo tapped his chest. Where it matters. He's becoming what the city made him. Cold. Brutal. Empty. Just like I became after Sunmi died. I'm not sure what you expect me to... I expect you to remind him that feeling something doesn't make you weak. That kindness isn't a liability. That there's more to life than power and control. Jin-soo leaned forward. You spoke Korean with love, Amara. Not because you had to. Because you wanted to give comfort to a stranger. That's rare, especially in this world. Mr. Cade, Jin-soo, please. Jin-soo. She took a breath. I'm not a therapist. I'm not qualified to fix anyone. I'm not asking you to fix him. I'm asking you to exist, to be yourself, to show him that not everyone in his orbit wants something from him. Jin-soo's smile was sad. The money, the contract, that's for Ronan. So he feels in control. But the truth? I'm hiring you to be human in a house that's forgotten how. Amara sat back, her mind reeling. That's a lot of pressure. Life is pressure. You strike me as someone who handles it well. Before she could respond, the door opened. Ronan stood in the threshold, still in his suit from earlier, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Dinner's ready. His gaze flicked between them. Unless you're too busy plotting my redemption. Jin-soo laughed, a real laugh that seemed to surprise even him. Your ears were burning? These walls are thinner than you think, Father. Then you heard what I said. Good. Saves me from repeating myself. Jin-soo stood, steadier than Amara expected. Let's eat. I'm starving and Helena made bulgogi. He walked past Ronan, patting his son's cheek with a gentleness that made Ronan's jaw clench. Amara started to follow, but Ronan caught her arm. Whatever my father told you, ignore it. You're here to keep him calm and stable, nothing more. And if I think he's right, that you need saving? Ronan's laugh was sharp. Then you're more naive than I thought. I don't need saving, Miss Cole. I need my father to stop seeing ghosts. Do your job, collect your money, and stay out of my way. He released her arm and walked away, leaving her alone with the sunset and the weight of impossible expectations. This was her life now. Caught between a dying man who wanted miracles and his son who'd forgotten how to believe in them. Amara looked out at the city, millions of lights, millions of people, all of them fighting their own battles. She'd thought medical school was hard, thought poverty and prejudice were the worst enemies she'd face. But standing in a billionaire's penthouse, surrounded by luxury built on violence, she realized the truth. The hardest battle was the one for someone else's soul, and she'd just agreed to fight it. Dinner was served in a dining room designed to intimidate. 20-foot ceilings, a table that could seat 30, and a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than most people's houses. Helena had set only 3 places at one end, creating an island of intimacy in an ocean of excess. Jin-soo sat at the head of the table, Ronan to his right, and Amara found herself placed directly across from the son, whose eyes tracked her every movement like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. This bulgogi is perfect, Jin-soo said, his chopsticks moving with practiced ease. just like Sunmi used to make. Ronan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Amara focused on her food, hyper-aware of every sound, the clink of silverware, the soft hum of the city beyond the windows, the weight of unspoken tension pressing down like a physical thing. "So, Amara," Jinsu broke the silence, "Ronan tells me you speak 5 languages? I wouldn't say fluent in all of them. Korean, Spanish, and French are solid. Mandarin and Italian still need work." "Impressive. How does a medical student find time for language study?" "Audiobooks on the subway, language apps during breaks. You'd be surprised what you can learn in stolen moments." She met Jinsu's warm gaze, carefully avoiding Ronan's cold one. "My grandfather always said that language is the key to understanding people, not just their words, but their hearts." "A wise man," Jinsu smiled. Sunmi believed the same thing. She spoke 4 languages herself, Korean, English, Japanese, and enough Italian to charm anyone. "Father," Ronan's voice was sharp, "perhaps we could discuss something other than the past." "The past is all I have left." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Jinsu set down his chopsticks with deliberate care. "You've taken everything else, my company, my decisions, my freedom to walk outside without an armed escort. To keep you safe, to keep me controlled." Jinsu's voice remained calm, but steel ran underneath. "There's a difference, son, one you've forgotten." Amara wanted to disappear into the floor. This was a family argument, private and painful, and she had no business witnessing it. But Ronan's eyes found hers, pinning her in place. "Miss Cole, perhaps you could explain to my father why security is necessary when half the families in this city would love to see him dead. I'm not getting in the middle of this. Too late. You're already in it." Ronan leaned back, his posture deceptively casual. "You accepted the job. You took the money. That makes you part of this family's ecosystem. I'm here to help your father, not referee your arguments. And yet here you are, sitting at our table, eating our food, living under our roof." His smile was sharp enough to cut. "Welcome to the Cade family, Miss Cole, where nothing is ever simple and everyone has an agenda." "If we're talking about agendas," Amara said quietly, "maybe you should ask yourself why you really brought me here." The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Ronan's expression went dangerously still. "Excuse me? Your father thinks I'm here to save you. You claim I'm here to keep him stable. But I think you both want the same thing, someone to blame when this inevitably falls apart." Jinsu laughed, the sound unexpected and genuine. "Oh, I like her. She has teeth." "Father, no, she's right. We're both using her. The question is whether she's smart enough to use us back." Jinsu turned to Amara. "So tell me, dear, what do you want from this arrangement besides money?" The honest answer rose to her lips before she could stop it. "A clear conscience." Both men stared at her. "My grandfather died alone while I studied for exams. I chose career over family, and I've regretted it every day since." Amara met Jinsu's gaze. "So yes, I took this job for the money, but I'm staying because I won't make that mistake twice. You remind me of him, stubborn, proud, slipping away while everyone around you pretends not to notice. If I can give you some comfort, some peace, then maybe I can forgive myself for failing him." The confession hung in the air, raw and painful. Jinsu reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "Thank you for your honesty." Ronan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I have work to do. Enjoy your dinner." He was gone before either of them could respond, the door closing behind him with controlled violence. "Don't mind him," Jinsu said softly. "Emotion makes him uncomfortable. Always has." "Even before your wife died?" "Especially then. Sunmi used to joke that Ronan came out of the womb wearing a suit and checking his watch." Jinsu's smile was sad. Lucas was different. He felt everything too much. Laughed too loud, cried too easily, loved without reservation. And it got him killed. Amara's breath caught. "The car accident was no accident." Jinsu's voice went flat. "But that's a story for another time. Tonight, tell me about your grandfather. What was his name?" So she did. She told him about Kim Jae-sun, who'd fled North Korea as a boy and built a life in America through sheer force of will. about his terrible jokes and his worst cooking, about the way he'd sung old Korean folk songs when he thought no one was listening. Jin-soo listened with an intensity that made her feel truly seen for the first time in years. When dinner ended, he squeezed her hand gently. "You're good for this house, Amara. Don't let my son's coldness drive you away." "I'm not that easy to scare." "Good, because tomorrow the real work begins." She didn't understand what he meant until the next morning, when Helena woke her at 6 with a gentle knock. "Mr. Jin-soo requests your presence for breakfast, and afterward, Mr. Ronan would like to see you in his office." Amara dragged herself out of the cloud bed and into the shower, letting the hot water wash away the surreal feeling that this was all an elaborate dream. Jin-soo was already at the breakfast table, surrounded by newspapers in 3 languages. He looked up as she entered, his smile genuine. "Good morning. Coffee? Please. Intravenously, if possible." He laughed and poured her a cup from an elegant silver service. "Late night studying? Biochemistry waits for no one. I have a midterm next week. Then we'll make sure you have time to prepare. My health is important, but so is your education." Jin-soo slid a newspaper toward her. "Can you read Korean script?" "Slowly, but yes." "Good. Read me the headlines." "My eyes aren't what they used to be." It was a lie. She could see him reading just fine moments ago, but she understood what he was really asking. He wanted to hear his language spoken with care, to maintain that connection to a world he'd left behind. So she read, stumbling over unfamiliar words while he corrected her pronunciation with infinite patience. "Your grandfather taught you well," he said when she finished. "But there's a Seoul accent underneath. Did he come from there?" "Busan, actually, but he lived in Seoul for years before the war." Jin-soo's eyes went distant. "I was born in Seoul, in a house that doesn't exist anymore, on a street that was paved over decades ago." He touched the newspaper gently. "Sometimes I think the Korea I remember is just a dream, that it died with Sunmi." "He was Korean?" "Half. Her mother was from Jeju Island. Her father was American, a soldier who actually married the woman he loved instead of abandoning her." Jin-soo's voice softened. "Sunmi grew up between worlds, never quite fitting in either. Maybe that's why she understood me. We were both ghosts haunting the wrong countries." Before Amara could respond, Ronan appeared in the doorway. He'd clearly been up for hours. His suit was impeccable, his hair still damp from a shower, but exhaustion shadowed his eyes. "Father, Miss Cole." His tone was professional, distant. "I need to borrow your caretaker." "She's not my property, Ronan. Ask her yourself." Ronan's jaw clenched. "Miss Cole, would you please join me in my office?" The please sounded like it physically hurt him. "Of course." Amara stood, squeezing Jin-soo's shoulder gently. "I'll be back soon." Ronan's office occupied the corner of the penthouse with views of both the river and the city. It was all dark wood and leather, dominated by a desk that looked like it belonged to a dictator. Computer screens lined one wall, displaying what looked like security feeds and stock tickers. He closed the door and gestured to a chair. "Sit." "I prefer to stand." Something flickered in his expression. Approval or annoyance, she couldn't tell. "Suit yourself. We need to discuss ground rules. You mentioned those at the hospital. These are different, personal." He moved to the windows, his silhouette sharp against the morning light. "My father is getting attached to you, quickly." "Isn't that the point?" "The point is stability, not dependency. He's mistaking you for my mother, Amara, projecting decades of grief onto a stranger who happens to speak Korean. And you think I'm encouraging it? I think you're kind, which in this house is dangerous." Ronan turned to face her. "My father has episodes. Moments where he forgets they're dead and remembers all over again. It destroys him every time. If he starts to believe you're actually Sunmi, I would never let him believe that. Wouldn't you? For 50,000 a month, people have done worse." Anger flared hot in her chest. "You don't know me. I know everyone has a price. I know that kindness is usually just greed in disguise." He stepped closer, and she caught that expensive scent again. "So tell me, Miss Cole, what's your real agenda? Medical school debt is high but not insurmountable. Why did you really accept this job?" "I told you last night, You told my father a pretty story about clear conscience and regret. Now tell me the truth. Amara met his cold gaze without flinching. The truth? I'm tired. Tired of working myself to death for scraps. Tired of professors who assume I'm only in medical school because of affirmative action. Tired of customers who snap their fingers like I'm invisible until they need something. Your father offered me a way out and I took it. Not because I'm noble, because I'm desperate and smart enough to recognize an opportunity. Ronan studied her for a long moment. At least you're honest. Unlike you, I never claimed otherwise. I'm exactly what I appear to be, a man who will do anything to protect what's mine. And your father? Is he yours to protect or control? The temperature in the room dropped. Be very careful, Miss Cole. You've been here less than a day. You know nothing about this family or what we've survived. Then educate me, because right now, all I see is a son who's so afraid of losing his father that he's locked him in a gilded cage. Ronan moved fast, faster than she expected, closing the distance between them until she could feel the heat radiating from his body. You want to know about fear? His voice was soft, lethal. 3 years ago, my father walked out onto the balcony in the middle of the night. Security found him standing on the railing, ready to jump. He thought he could fly to wherever Sunmi had gone. We've had him on suicide watch ever since. Amara's breath caught. So yes, I've locked him in a gilded cage, because the alternative is a casket. Ronan's eyes burned into hers. If you can't handle that reality, there's the door. Take your money and run. But if you stay, you follow my rules. You keep him stable. You don't encourage his delusions. And you sure as hell don't lecture me about control when you have no idea what it costs to keep someone alive against their will. He stepped back, and Amara could breathe again. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Helena will give you today's schedule. Father has a doctor's appointment at 11. You'll accompany him. This afternoon, he has physical therapy. Evenings are yours to study, but you eat dinner with us. Every night. That wasn't in the contract. Consider it an amendment. My father eats better when there's company. And since you're so concerned about his well-being, Ronan's smile was sharp. You won't mind sacrificing a few hours of your evening. It was a power play, clear and simple. A reminder that despite the money and the fancy room, she was still an employee. Fine. Anything else? Yes. Stay out of my personal business. Don't ask about my work, my associates, or anything you might overhear. What happens in this house stays in this house. Break that rule, and the contract is void. Understood. Good. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Amara, my father likes you. Against my better judgment, I can see why. But don't mistake his affection for protection. If you hurt him, intentionally or not, you'll discover exactly how dangerous I can be. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the city sprawling below and the weight of impossible expectations crushing down. The doctor's appointment was at a private clinic in Midtown, the kind of place where celebrities went for discretion and politicians went to hide their vices. Jinsu hated every minute of it. I'm fine, he insisted as a nurse took his blood pressure. This is unnecessary. The episode at the restaurant suggests otherwise, Dr. Chen said. She was a small woman with steel in her spine and intelligence in her eyes. Your vitals are stable, but your cortisol levels are elevated. You're stressed. I wonder why. Perhaps it's the armed guards following me everywhere. Father, Ronan warned from his position by the door, don't father me. I'm 73 years old. If I want to be stressed, that's my right. Amar caught the doctor's eye and saw understanding there. This was a familiar argument, worn smooth by repetition. Mr. Cade, Dr. Chen said gently, I'm recommending we adjust your medication. Add something for anxiety. No, Jinsu's voice was firm. I won't be drugged into compliance. It's not about compliance. It's about quality of life. My quality of life was fine until my son decided I couldn't be trusted with my own decisions. The room went silent. Dr. Chen looked at Ronan. Could we have a moment? No. Jinsu stood, surprisingly steady. Whatever you want to say about me, say it to my face. I'm losing my mind, not my hearing. Mr. Cade, it's dementia, isn't it? Early onset, probably Alzheimer's, definitely getting worse. Jinsu's voice didn't shake. I've known for months. I can feel myself slipping, moments where I can't remember if I took my medication, where I put my keys, whether Sunmi is alive or dead. So stop dancing around it and tell me the truth." Dr. Chen exchanged a glance with Ronan, who gave a slight nod. "It's vascular dementia," she said quietly, "caused by the stroke you had 2 years ago. It's progressive but manageable with proper care." "How long?" "That's difficult to say. How long before I don't recognize my own son?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. "Months? Maybe a year?" Every case is different. Dr. Chen's professionalism cracked, just slightly. "I'm sorry." Jinsu sat back down, suddenly looking every one of his 73 years. "I see." Amara moved without thinking, kneeling beside his chair and taking his hand. "You're not alone in this." "Aren't I? My wife is dead. My youngest son is dead. And my oldest—" Jinsu looked at Ronan, his expression unreadable. "He's been dead inside since the day we buried them." "Father, that's not—" "It's the truth. You know it. I know it. The only question is whether you'll do something about it before it's too late." Ronan's face could have been carved from marble. "We should go. I have a meeting at 2. The ride back to the penthouse was silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. Jinsu stared out the window, his hand still gripping Amara's like she was a lifeline. When they arrived, he went straight to his room without a word. The door closed behind him with a finality that made Amara's chest hurt. "He needs time," Ronan said, his voice carefully neutral. "Don't take it personally." "A year. Maybe less." Amara turned to face him. "And you've known this whole time?" "Since the diagnosis, yes." "So this job, my job, it's hospice care. You hired me to watch him die." "I hired you to give him peace in whatever time he has left." Ronan's control finally cracked, just for a moment, and she saw the grief underneath. "Is that so terrible?" "No, but you could have told me the truth." "Would you have taken the job if I had?" The honest answer was yes, but she understood why he'd kept it secret. Because hope was easier to sell than hospice, because admitting his father was dying made it real. "What happened to Lucas?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Ronan's entire body went rigid. "That's none of your concern. Your father said it wasn't an accident." "My father says a lot of things. Most of them are grief-talking." "Is that what you tell yourself? That his pain isn't real?" "What I tell myself is none of your business." Ronan's voice went cold. "Your job is to keep him comfortable, not psychoanalyze my family. Stay in your lane, Miss Cole." He walked away, his footsteps echoing in the vast space, leaving Amara alone with questions that had no safe answers. That night, she found Jinsu in his room, surrounded by photo albums. Pictures of a life lived in moments now fading, a young woman with a radiant smile, 2 boys laughing in a park, family dinners and birthday parties and ordinary happiness. "That's Sun-mi," Jinsu said, pointing to the woman. 32 years old in this picture. We just bought our first house in Brooklyn. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. She's beautiful." She was everything, fierce and funny and absolutely fearless. His finger traced her face gently. She came from nothing, like me, built herself up through pure stubborn will. When we met, I was running a small construction company, barely scraping by. She was a translator for the Korean consulate, brilliant and ambitious. Everyone said we wouldn't last, that we were too different, too broken, too damaged by our pasts. But you proved them wrong. For 30 years, 30 perfect, messy, complicated years. Jinsu turned the page. That's Lucas, age 7, already smiling like he knew a secret the rest of us didn't. The boy in the photo was all dimples and mischief, his eyes bright with joy. Beside him stood Ronan, or a younger, softer version. Even then, his face held that controlled expression, but his hand rested protectively on his brother's shoulder. They were close? Inseparable. Ronan was the serious one, always planning, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Lucas was pure impulse, jumped first, asked questions later. Jinsu's voice cracked. They balanced each other, until they didn't. What happened? Jinsu closed the album carefully, his hands trembling. Lucas found out something he shouldn't have. Something about the family business that Ronan had kept hidden. They fought. The worst fight they'd ever had. Lucas stormed out, said he needed air, needed to think. He took Sunmi's car because his was in the shop. Amara's blood ran cold. "The drunk driver," she whispered. "He hit Lucas?" Lucas was driving. Sunmi was in the passenger seat. They were coming back from the store. Lucas was bringing her favorite tea, trying to calm down. Jinsu's tears fell freely now. The other driver ran a red light going 90 miles an hour. They never had a chance. Oh, God. Ronan got the call while he was in a meeting. By the time he reached the hospital, they were both gone, and the last words he'd said to his brother were, "I wish I'd never trusted you." The pieces clicked into place. The guilt. The control. The desperate need to protect his father even if it meant suffocating him. "He blames himself," Amar said. "We both do. If I'd built a different business, made different choices, maybe Lucas would never have found out. Maybe he'd still be alive." Jinsu wiped his eyes. But Ronan carries it differently. He thinks if he controls everything, every variable, every risk, he can prevent another tragedy. What he doesn't understand is that you can't control grief. It controls you. A sound from the doorway made them both turn. Ronan stood there, his face pale, his hands clenched into fists. How long had he been listening? "I didn't," Jinsu started. "It's fine." Ronan's voice was flat. "You're right. I do blame myself. Every single day." He looked at Amara, and for just a moment, his mask slipped. "Now you know. The Cade family's greatest shame. We killed the only good person in this family because we were too busy playing power games to notice he was drowning." Ronan, Jinsu stood, reaching for his son. But Ronan was already gone, the door to his office slamming hard enough to rattle the frames on the walls. Amara found him an hour later on the penthouse balcony, 30 stories above the city, smoking a cigarette with the kind of intensity that suggested he was trying to burn something away. "I didn't know you smoked," she said quietly. "I don't. Quit 5 years ago. But some nights..." He took a drag, the ember glowing in the darkness. "Some nights I need to feel something, even if it's just my lungs burning." She leaned against the railing, careful to keep distance between them. "Your father didn't mean to hurt you." "I know. He never does." Ronan flicked ash into the wind. "He just tells the truth, and the truth is a weapon." "Is that why you hide from it?" "I don't hide. I compartmentalize." "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm standing, you're so busy controlling everything that you've forgotten how to actually live." Ronan laughed, a bitter sound. "And you've been here, what, 2 days? Suddenly you're an expert on my life?" "No, but I know what guilt looks like. I wear it every day." Amara turned to face him. "You can't save your brother by suffocating your father. It doesn't work like that." "Then how does it work? Tell me, since you're so wise." "You forgive yourself. You let the people who love you help carry the weight. You stop trying to control everything and accept that life is messy and painful, and sometimes there are no good answers." "Forgive myself." Ronan crushed the cigarette under his heel. "My brother died hating me. My mother died trying to comfort him. My father is losing his mind piece by piece, and I'm the reason our family fell apart. But sure, I'll just forgive myself. Problem solved." "Lucas didn't die hating you. You didn't know him." "No, but I know that brothers who are inseparable don't stop loving each other over one fight. He was angry, hurt, probably scared. But hate? No. That takes time." And he ran out of time. Ronan's hands gripped the railing hard enough to make his knuckles white. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Maybe not. But I know that punishing yourself won't bring him back. And it won't save your father from dementia. All it does is make you into someone Lucas wouldn't recognize." The silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of the city below, sirens and horns, and the constant hum of millions of lives intersecting. "He wanted me to stop," Ronan said finally, his voice barely audible. "The business dealings, the gray areas. He said we were becoming exactly what our father had tried to escape. And he was right. So change. It's not that simple. When you're this deep, extraction isn't an option. People depend on me. Families, businesses, entire neighborhoods. I can't just walk away because I'm feeling guilty about my dead brother." "I'm not asking you to walk away." I'm asking you to stop punishing everyone around you for crimes you think you committed. Amara moved closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body despite the November chill. Your father doesn't need a warden. He needs a son. Can you give him that? In the time he has left? Ronan finally looked at her, and in his eyes she saw exhaustion deeper than any sleep could cure. I don't know if I remember how. Then learn. You've got a year, maybe less, but it's more than Lucas had, more than your mother had. Don't waste it building higher walls. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then, impossibly, he smiled, a real smile that transformed his face into something almost boyish. You're terrifying, you know that? I've been told. My father was right. You do have teeth. Ronan straightened, some of the tension bleeding from his shoulders. Fine. I'll try. But if this goes sideways, if he gets worse because I'm not maintaining strict protocols, then we'll handle it together. That's what teams do. We're not a team, Miss Cole. We're two people trying to keep a dying man comfortable. Same thing. Ronan shook his head, but the ghost of that smile remained. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's physical therapy day. Father hates it almost as much as he hates doctor appointments. Joy! Welcome to the glamorous world of hospice care. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Amara? Thank you for what you said. He was gone before she could respond, leaving her alone with the city lights and the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. She'd come here for money and absolution. But standing on this balcony, breathing air that tasted like smoke and secrets, she realized the truth. She wasn't just keeping Jinsu comfortable until dementia stole him away. She was fighting for Ronan's soul, for the possibility that someone who'd built walls out of grief could learn to tear them down. It was a battle she had no business fighting. But as she walked back inside, past the photos of a family torn apart by tragedy, she knew she wouldn't walk away. Not now. Not when she could finally see the humanity underneath the monster, even if it destroyed her in the process. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm that felt almost normal. If normal included armed guards and enough money to make her student loans look like pocket change. Amara woke each morning to Jinsu's gentle knock, spent hours reading Korean newspapers and discussing philosophy over coffee, accompanied him to endless medical appointments, and slowly learned to navigate the strange ecosystem of the Cade household. But it was the evenings that changed everything. Ronan started joining them for dinner every night, true to his word. At first, he remained distant, answering questions with single syllables and excusing himself the moment the meal ended. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. It started with a comment about the bulgogi being too spicy. Then a memory about Lucas stealing food from their plates when they were children. Then an actual laugh. When Jinsu told an embarrassing story about 5-year-old Ronan refusing to speak anything but Korean for an entire month because he'd decided English was a language for quitters. I was a determined child, Ronan said, the corner of his mouth quirking up. You were insufferable, Jinsu corrected. Your kindergarten teacher called me in tears, said you'd convinced half the class that English was optional. I was teaching them linguistic flexibility. You were being a stubborn little dictator. Amara watched them banter, something warm unfurling in her chest. This was what Jinsu had meant. Not fixing Ronan, but reminding him that feeling something didn't make him weak, that humanity was still possible, even in a house built on blood. 3 weeks in, everything changed. Amara was studying in her room, buried in biochemistry textbooks, and contemplating the many ways organic chemistry was designed to destroy souls when her phone buzzed. A text from Ronan. Come to my office. Now. The tone sent ice through her veins. She found him behind his desk, surrounded by computer screens displaying security footage. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes burned with barely contained fury. Sit down. She sat. Do you know what this is? He spun one of the monitors toward her. The footage showed the penthouse lobby from earlier that day. A man in a delivery uniform handing a package to Helena. Nothing unusual except, watch his left hand. She watched. The delivery man's hand moved subtly, placing something under the reception desk. A device of some kind, small and dark. A bug, Ronan said. Professional grade. The kind that costs $50,000 and can transmit through reinforced walls. Amara's mouth went dry. Who? That's the question, isn't it? He pulled up another screen showing the delivery man's face. Facial recognition came back with 7 aliases, all connected to corporate espionage firms. Someone paid a lot of money to spy on this household. What does this have to do with me? Ronan's eyes cut to hers. The device was placed 2 hours after you returned from your biochemistry exam. The same exam you told my father about at breakfast. The same exam you mentioned studying for in a text to your roommate. Understanding crashed over her like a wave. You think I'm involved? I think coincidences are rare in my world. I think someone knew exactly when the household schedule changed. And I think you're the newest variable in an otherwise controlled environment. You're insane. I would never... Wouldn't you? For enough money? For protection from whoever hired you? Ronan stood, his presence filling the room like a physical threat. I've had you investigated, Amara. Your mother works 2 jobs in Queens. Your student loans are crushing. Your aunt in Jersey just lost her house. You're desperate. Desperate people make deals. Rage burned through her fear. She stood too, refusing to be intimidated. I took your deal, the one you offered. I didn't need to make another. Unless someone offered more. Unless someone realized that getting an asset inside the Cade household was worth more than whatever I'm paying you. Then they're going to be disappointed because I'm not your enemy. Prove it. How? What do you want from me? Ronan moved around the desk, closing the distance between them until she could feel the heat of his anger. I want the truth. Who approached you? What do they want? Give me names, and I'll consider the possibility that you're just a pawn instead of a player. No one approached me. I'm a medical student who took a job caring for your father. That's it. That's it, he repeated, his voice dripping with contempt. You expect me to believe you just happened to speak the exact phrase that would calm my father. Just happened to have no other job prospects. Just happened to accept an offer that most people would run from. Yes, because that's what happened. Or maybe you were sent here specifically. Maybe someone knew my father's weaknesses and trained you to exploit them. The accusation hit like a slap. You bastard! Your father is dying and you think I'm using that for espionage? I think everyone uses everything. That's how survival works. Not for me. Not for people who actually have principles. Ronan laughed, sharp and bitter. Principles. Is that what you call your clear conscience? Your need for absolution? He leaned closer, and she could see the cold calculation in his eyes. I know guilt when I see it, Amara. You're running from something. The question is whether it's your grandfather's death or something more recent. She wanted to hit him, wanted to scream, wanted to walk out and never look back. Instead, she said quietly, You're wrong about me. Then prove it. Let me search your room, your phone, your computer. Let me verify every conversation you've had since you got here. No. No? You want trust? It works both ways. You either believe I'm telling the truth or you fire me right now. But I'm not letting you invade my privacy because you're paranoid. They stared at each other, the tension crackling like electricity. You're either very brave or very stupid, Ronan said finally. Someone told me it's usually both. The ghost of a smile touched his lips, then vanished. Fine, I won't search your things, but you're under surveillance until we identify who planted that device. Every call monitored, every movement tracked. If you're innocent, you have nothing to worry about. And if I'm not, then you'll discover exactly how creative I can be when someone betrays me. He dismissed her with a gesture, already turning back to his screens. Amara left his office on shaking legs and barely made it to her room before the tears came, not from fear, but from rage and helplessness, and the crushing weight of being suspected when she'd done nothing wrong. Jenna found her 20 minutes later, still crying into her pillow. What happened? She sat on the bed, her hand rubbing circles on Amara's back. Did Ronan... He thinks I'm a spy. Amara's laugh was hysterical. Someone planted a listening device, and because I'm new, I'm automatically suspicious. That's insane. That's his world. Everyone's an enemy until proven otherwise. Jenna was quiet for a moment. Do you want to leave? We can pack right now. Use the safe word. Get out before this gets worse. Amara sat up, wiping her eyes. An abandoned Jinsu? Leave him with a son who's so paranoid he can't see past his own fear? That's not your problem. But it is. I chose this. I took the money and the responsibility. I can't just walk away because it got hard. This isn't hard, Amara. This is dangerous. If Ronan really thinks you're involved in corporate espionage, he doesn't, not really. Amara took a shaky breath. He's scared. Someone got past his security, and that terrifies him because he can't control it. So he's lashing out at the easiest target. And you're just going to take it? No, I'm going to prove him wrong. She spent the next 2 days doing exactly that. Every conversation with Jinsu happened in common areas where cameras could verify she wasn't passing information. Every text, every email, every phone call was conducted with the knowledge that Ronan was watching. It should have felt invasive, humiliating. Instead, it felt like war. On the third day, Jinsu noticed something was wrong. "You're quiet," he said over breakfast. "And you keep looking at the corners of rooms like you're counting cameras." "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." Jinsu set down his coffee. "What did my son do?" "Nothing. Just a misunderstanding about the listening device." Amar's head snapped up. "You know about that?" "I may be losing my mind, but I'm not deaf. I heard Ronan shouting in his office, and I know him. When he's afraid, he attacks." Jinsu reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "He accused you. He's just being cautious. He's being cruel. There's a difference." Jinsu's voice hardened. "I'll talk to him." "Please don't. It'll only make things worse." "Worse than having you monitored like a criminal? Amara, you've been nothing but kind to this family. You don't deserve to be treated like a threat." "Maybe I am a threat. Maybe I'm changing things in ways he can't control." Jinsu smiled sadly. "That's exactly what you are, and exactly what he needs." That evening, Jinsu insisted Ronan join them for dinner an hour early. The tension in the dining room could have cut steel. "Father," Ronan said carefully, "if this is about Miss Cole, it is. And you're going to listen." Ronan's jaw clenched, but he remained silent. Jinsu turned to Amara. "Tell him what you told me this morning about your grandfather's funeral." Amara blinked, confused. They'd been talking about her biochem exam, not... Then she understood. Jinsu was giving her an opening, a way to make Ronan see her as human instead of suspect. She took a breath. "My grandfather died on a Tuesday. I found out during organic chemistry. The professor told me I could leave, take time, grieve. But I had an exam the next day, a big one. So I stayed in class, took notes, studied through the night while my mother planned the funeral alone." Ronan's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "I missed the funeral," Amara continued. "Told myself it was because I couldn't afford to fail. But the truth? I was afraid. Afraid of seeing him in that casket. Afraid of admitting I'd chosen my career over the last months of his life. So I hid behind textbooks and told myself I was being responsible." "That's not the same," Ronan started. "Isn't it? You hide behind control and surveillance. I hid behind studying. We're both just afraid of feeling something we can't fix." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Ronan said, "You're right, I am afraid. Because in my experience, people are exactly as trustworthy as their incentives allow. And someone paid a lot of money to spy on this household. Then find them. But stop punishing me for crimes I didn't commit." "How can I trust that?" "You can't. That's what trust is, a leap of faith without proof." Amara met his gaze steadily. "Your father took that leap with me. Can you?" Ronan looked at Jinsu, who nodded slightly. "Fine," Ronan said finally. "The surveillance stops. But if I find out you've lied to me, you won't, because I haven't." Something in his expression softened, just barely. "I hope you're right." Dinner that night was quiet, but the tension had shifted from hostile to cautious. Progress, Amara thought. Tiny, fragile progress. 2 days later, Ronan found the real source of the leak. Amara was reading Korean poetry to Jinsu when Ronan burst into the room, his face alight with something that looked almost like joy. "It was Marcus." Jinsu looked up. "The security detail?" "One of them. The new hire from 3 months ago. He's been feeding information to the Castellano family in exchange for payment and protection." Ronan's smile was sharp. "We have him in custody now." Relief flooded through Amara so intensely her hands shook. "So I'm cleared?" You were never really a suspect, just a variable I couldn't account for. Ronan's eyes met hers. I'm sorry for the accusations, for the surveillance, for treating you like an enemy. It was the closest thing to an apology she'd probably ever get from him. Apology accepted, on one condition. His eyebrow rose. You're negotiating again? Always. The condition is no more assuming the worst about people. Not everyone is out to destroy you. In my world, most people are. Then maybe your world needs to change. Ronan stared at her for a long moment, then laughed. A real laugh that transformed his entire face. You're relentless. I've been told. Jinsu watched the exchange with poorly hidden satisfaction. Now that we've established Amara isn't a corporate spy, perhaps we can discuss something more important. What's that? Ronan asked. Thanksgiving is next week. We should celebrate as a family. The word family hung in the air like a challenge. Ronan's smile faded. Father, we haven't celebrated Thanksgiving since Sunmi died. I know, but she would have hated us mourning forever. Lucas, too. Jinsu's voice was firm. I want one more Thanksgiving, a real one, with people I care about and food that doesn't come from hospital caterers. We don't have anyone to invite. We have Amara, and Jenna, and Helena, who's cooked for this family for 15 years without ever being invited to share the meal. Jinsu stood, stronger than he'd looked in weeks. I'm not asking, Ronan, I'm telling you. We're having Thanksgiving. Ronan looked at Amara helplessly. A little help here, she smiled. Your father's right. Life's too short to skip holidays. Outvoted by the women in my life. I never had a chance. But Ronan was smiling too. Fine. Thanksgiving it is. The week leading up to it was chaos in the best way. Helena recruited Amara and Jenna for menu planning, turning the kitchen into a war room of recipes and ingredient lists. Jinsu insisted on traditional Korean dishes alongside the turkey, japchae, kimchi jjigae, and his mother's recipe for sweet potato cakes. Sunmi always made these, he said, showing Amara the handwritten recipe card. The ink had faded, but the love in every word was still visible. She said Thanksgiving should honor all our traditions, not just the American ones. Amara took the card carefully, feeling the weight of trust. I'll do my best. I know you will. Ronan stayed mostly out of the way, citing work as an excuse. But Amara caught him in the kitchen late one night, reading through his mother's recipe cards with an expression so raw it made her chest ache. Can't sleep? She asked quietly. He didn't startle, just set down the cards. Too many memories in this house. Thanksgiving was her favorite holiday. She'd start planning in October, invite everyone she'd met that year, neighbors, coworkers, the mailman if he seemed lonely. Our table would have 20 people speaking 6 languages, and she'd be in the center of it all, laughing like she'd orchestrated a miracle. She sounds amazing. She was. And Lucas was just like her, never met a stranger, never held a grudge, never understood why everyone else couldn't just be kind. Ronan's voice cracked. Sometimes I think the world killed them because it couldn't handle that much goodness. Amara moved closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. Or maybe they're proof that goodness can exist even when the world tries to destroy it. That's optimistic. Someone in this house has to be. He turned to face her, and in the dim kitchen light, he looked younger, more human. Why do you do this? Push me to feel things, force me to remember, refuse to let me hide. Because your father asked me to save you, and I don't know how to do that except by being honest. I don't need saving. Everyone needs saving, Ronan. The question is whether you'll let someone try. They stood there in the darkness, the city sleeping below them, the weight of the past pressing down like a physical thing. Then Ronan did something that surprised them both. He kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, like he'd forgotten how. Then deeper, more desperate, like he was trying to drown something he couldn't name. Amara's brain screamed that this was a mistake, that he was her boss, her employer, a man so dangerous that people disappeared for looking at him wrong. But her body didn't care about logic. It responded to the heat of his mouth, the strength of his hands cupping her face, the way he kissed like he was memorizing her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ronan looked as shocked as she felt. That was he started. A mistake, Amara finished. Right, a mistake. But his thumb was still tracing her jawline, and his eyes were burning into hers. We can't, she agreed. You work for me, and you're my employer. This is completely inappropriate. Completely. Neither of them moved. We should establish boundaries, Ronan said. Definitely. Professional distance. Absolutely. He kissed her again, harder this time, lifting her onto the counter with an ease that made her gasp. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back so he could trail kisses down her throat. This is insane, Amara breathed. Agreed. Your father will kill us. Probably. Ronan pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. We're really doing this? We're really stupid. That's not an answer. Amara looked at him, this complicated, damaged man who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten what sky looked like, who'd lost everyone he loved and decided never to risk it again, who'd kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Yes, she whispered. We're really doing this. His smile was devastating. Then we're keeping it secret. No one can know. Agreed. Especially not Jinsu. Especially not him. He'll get ideas, start planning weddings. That's jumping ahead a bit. You don't know my father. He's a romantic trapped in a crime lord's body. Ronan helped her down from the counter, his hands lingering on her waist. This is just physical. Stress relief, nothing more. Right, just physical. We're adults. We can handle this. Totally handle this. They were both lying, and they both knew it. But as Ronan kissed her one more time before disappearing to his room, Amara couldn't bring herself to care about the consequences. For the first time since arriving in this golden cage, she felt alive. Thanksgiving morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that made New York look like a postcard. Amara woke early, her lips still tingling from the memory of Ronan's mouth, and tried to convince herself that last night had been a dream. Then she saw the text on her phone. Don't wear red. It's my favorite color, and I won't be able to focus. She smiled despite herself and chose blue instead. The penthouse transformed throughout the day. Helena orchestrated the chaos with military precision, while Jenna taste-tested everything and provided running commentary. These sweet potato cakes are insane, she said, her mouth full. Jinsu's mother was a genius. That's because you're using enough butter to stop a heart, Jinsu said from his position at the table, where he was supposedly supervising but mostly stealing food. Sunmi always said, if it doesn't make your cardiologist nervous, you didn't use enough butter. I like her philosophy, Jenna said. By 6 p.m., the table was set for 7, Jinsu at the head, Ronan to his right, then Amara, Jenna, Helena, and 2 of the security guards who'd been with the family for over a decade. It was intimate and strange and absolutely nothing like the Thanksgivings Amara had grown up with in her mother's cramped Queen's apartment. But when Jinsu raised his glass for a toast, his eyes bright with unshed tears, it felt exactly right. To family, he said simply. The ones we're born with, the ones we choose, and the ones who choose us back. To family, they echoed. Ronan's eyes found Amara's across the table, and the heat in his gaze made her forget how to breathe. This was dangerous, reckless, everything she'd promised herself she wouldn't do. But as dinner progressed, filled with laughter and stories and moments of joy that felt stolen from tragedy, Amara realized something terrifying. She wasn't just falling for Ronan Cade. She was already gone. And in a world built on blood and secrets, that was the most dangerous thing of all. The secret lasted exactly 3 days. Not because they were careless, but because Jinsu Cade had survived 73 years by reading people better than they read themselves. Amara was pouring his morning coffee when he said casually, "You're sleeping with my son." She nearly dropped the pot. What? Don't insult my intelligence by denying it. You smile differently now. He actually laughs at dinner. And last night, I saw him leave your room at 2 in the morning. Jinsu's eyes sparkled with amusement. So, how long has this been going on? Heat flooded her face. Since Thanksgiving, but it's not. We're not in love? Please. I've seen the way you look at each other, like you're both drowning and the other person is air. He patted her hand. I'm happy for you, both of you. You're not angry? Why would I be angry? You're the best thing that's happened to this family in 5 years. If you can convince my son to feel something besides guilt and rage, that's a miracle. It's not serious, Amara said, even as her heart called her a liar. Just physical. Jinsu laughed. Keep telling yourself that, but when you're ready to admit the truth, know that you have my blessing. She wanted to argue, to insist that it really was just stress relief and chemistry. But Jinsu's knowing smile made it clear he saw through her completely. The real problem started a week later. Amara was in Jinsu's room reading him Korean poetry when his hands started trembling. Not the usual age-related shake, but violent spasms that made him drop his teacup. Jinsu? His eyes went unfocused. Sun-mi, iodi iseo? Where are you? Her heart sank. An episode, doctor. Chen had warned they would get worse as the dementia progressed. I'm here, Amara said gently, taking his hands. Gwenkenhayo. It's okay. No. Jinsu pulled away, confusion twisting his features. You're not her. You're not... Where is she? Where's my wife? Jinsu, please. She was just here. She was singing, mother's song. Why did she leave? Tears streamed down his face. Why does she always leave? Amara hit the emergency button hidden on her bracelet, one of Ronan's security measures. Within seconds, 2 guards appeared, then Ronan himself, still in a business suit from whatever meeting he'd abandoned. Father? Ronan's voice was calm, controlled, even as his eyes showed panic. It's okay. You're safe. Ronan? Jinsu focused on his son, recognition flickering. Where's your mother? She's gone, Father. Remember? No, she was just here, singing. She promised she'd never leave. Jinsu's confusion turned to rage. You're lying. You're all lying to me. He tried to stand, stumbled, and Ronan caught him before he fell. The sight of them, father and son, both breaking, made Amar's chest crack open. Doctor. Chen arrived within the hour, her expression grave after examining Jinsu, who'd finally calmed enough to sleep. It's progressing faster than I'd hoped, she said quietly in Ronan's office. The episodes will become more frequent, more violent. How frequent? Ronan's voice was flat, dead. Daily, maybe multiple times a day. He'll start forgetting more recent memories first. You, Miss Cole, the past 5 years. Eventually, he'll only remember his youth. Korea, Sun-mi, when they first met. How long until he doesn't recognize me at all? Weeks, maybe a month. Ronan's hands clenched into fists. And then? Then we make him comfortable. Manage the symptoms. Wait. Dr. Chen's professionalism cracked. I'm sorry, Ronan. There's nothing more we can do. After she left, Ronan stood by the window, his shoulders rigid with tension. Amara wanted to go to him, to offer comfort, but the grief radiating from him was so intense it felt like a wall. He's dying, Ronan said finally. Not someday. Now. And I can't stop it. No one can stop it. I've stopped everything else, controlled every variable, eliminated every threat, but this, his voice broke. I can't fight his own mind. Amara crossed to him, wrapping her arms around him from behind. He stiffened, then relaxed into her embrace. You can't fight it, she whispered, but you can be there. Make the time he has left matter. How? He won't even know who I am. Then you remind him, every day, every hour if you have to. You show him he's loved, even when he can't remember why. Ronan turned in her arms, his face raw with pain. I don't know if I can watch him fade away. You can, because he needs you to. She cupped his face. And so do I. The confession hung between them, more significant than any words of love. Ronan kissed her desperately, like she was the only solid thing in a world turning to liquid. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. This was supposed to be just physical, he said. I know. We agreed no feelings. I know. So why does it feel like you're the only thing keeping me sane? Because we're both idiots who don't know when to quit. His laugh was broken. I'm falling in love with you. Amara's heart stopped. Ronan, I know it's insane. I know we've only known each other 2 months. I know you're probably going to run screaming when this is over. He pulled back to meet her eyes. But I need you to know, before my father forgets who I am, before everything falls apart, I'm in love with you, Amara Cole. She should have been terrified, should have remembered all the reasons this was impossible, his world, his violence, his darkness. Instead, she said, I love you too. The kiss that followed was different from all the others, not desperate or hungry, but tender, a promise instead of an escape. We're going to get through this, Amara whispered. Together. Together, he agreed. The next month was brutal. Jinsu's episodes increased in frequency and intensity. Some days he knew them. Others, he thought Amara was Sunmi and Ronan was a stranger trying to kidnap him. He became violent during the worst episodes, throwing things and screaming in Korean. But there were good moments, too. Mornings when his mind was clear and he'd tell stories about Sunmi and Lucas. Afternoons when he'd laugh at old photographs and remember joy instead of loss. Amara documented everything. Every story, every laugh, every moment of clarity. She filled notebooks with his words, recorded his voice reading Korean poetry, captured the essence of who he was before dementia stole it completely. Why are you doing this? Jinsu asked one lucid afternoon. Because you deserve to be remembered. The real you. Not just the tragedy. His eyes filled with tears. You're a gift, Amara. I hope my son knows that. He does. Good. Then when I'm gone, when I don't remember my own name, you take care of him. Promise me. I promise. Jinsu squeezed her hand. And one more thing. In my desk, bottom drawer, there's a file. Red folder. When the time comes, give it to Ronan. Tell him Lucas forgave him. What's in the file? The truth about that night. About why Lucas and Sunmi were really driving. Jinsu's expression turned sharp, clear. My son has carried guilt that doesn't belong to him. It's time he knew. Before Amara could ask more, Jinsu's eyes went unfocused again. The lucidity flickered and died like a candle in the wind. 2 weeks later, Jinsu stopped recognizing anyone. He lived entirely in the past now, speaking only Korean, calling for his mother, asking about a shop in Seoul that had been demolished 50 years ago. Dr. Chen recommended moving him to a specialized facility, but Ronan refused. He stays here, in his home, with family. So they converted his room into a medical suite, hired round-the-clock nurses, and took shifts sitting with him even when he didn't know they were there. Amara was with him when he said Sunmi's name for the last time. Seon Maya, he whispered, his eyes focusing on something only he could see. Gidar yoso. Neomu ore gidar yoso. Sunmi. I waited. I waited so long. His breathing changed, slowed. Amara hit the emergency button, but she knew. This was it. Ronan burst through the door, followed by medical staff, but it was already too late. Jinsu's eyes were fixed on that invisible distance, a smile on his lips. Father? Ronan knelt beside the bed, taking his father's hand. Father, please, don't go. Not yet. But Jinsu was already gone, his last breath escaping like a prayer. The silence that followed was absolute. Ronan didn't cry, didn't scream. He just held his father's hand and stared at nothing, his face a mask of devastation. Amara touched his shoulder gently. Ronan, get out. What? Get out. All of you, leave me alone with him. The medical staff hesitated until Amara nodded. They filed out quietly, leaving Ronan alone with his father's body. Amara stood outside the door, her heart breaking, and listened to the sound of Ronan Cade finally crying. The funeral was small. Jinsu had requested cremation, his ashes scattered in the same place where Sunmi and Lucas rested, a private garden overlooking the Han River in Korea that the Cade family owned. They flew to Seoul 3 days later. Ronan hadn't spoken more than 10 words since his father died. He moved through the arrangements like a ghost, signing papers and making decisions with mechanical efficiency. Amara stayed close, not pushing, just present. The garden was beautiful, cherry blossoms beginning to bloom, stone paths winding through carefully manicured landscape. The memorial stones for Sunmi and Lucas stood side by side, elegant and simple. Ronan scattered his father's ashes at sunrise, speaking Korean words Amara didn't understand. When he finished, he stood there for a long time, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Finally, he turned to her. "It's done. They're all together now." "Yes." "I'm alone." "No, you're not." Amara took his hand. "I'm here." "For how long? Your contract ended when he died. You're free to go." The words hit like a slap. "Is that what you want? For me to leave?" "I want—" Ronan's voice broke. "I want my family back. I want to undo every mistake. I want Lucas to forgive me for getting him killed." "Then read this." Amara pulled out the red folder from her bag. "Your father said to give it to you, said Lucas forgave you." Ronan took the folder with trembling hands. Inside were letters, dozens of them in Lucas's handwriting. "What is this?" "Read them." So he did, right there in the garden, while Amara stood watch. She saw his expression change as he read, confusion, then shock, then something like relief. When he finished, tears streamed down his face. "He knew," Ronan whispered. "Lucas knew about the business. About everything. Not from discovering it, but because Father told him. Months before the fight." "What?" "Father asked Lucas to help me, to be my conscience, my balance." Lucas agreed. That night, the night they died, they weren't running from anything. Lucas was bringing Sunmi her favorite tea because she was helping him plan how to reform the business from the inside. Ronan's laugh was broken. "The fight we had was staged, Father's idea, to make it look like Lucas was rebelling so no one would suspect he was actually helping me transition everything legitimate." Understanding crashed over Amara. "So the guilt you've been carrying was based on a lie. A necessary lie to protect Lucas's cover, but a lie nonetheless." Ronan looked at the memorial stones. They died doing exactly what they wanted, building something better together. And I've spent 5 years hating myself for a crime I didn't commit. Jinsu should have told you. He tried. In the months after the accident. But I wouldn't listen. Insisted I knew the truth. Eventually he stopped trying and just let me carry it. Ronan wiped his eyes. He was protecting me. Even in his grief, even losing his mind, he was protecting me. That's what parents do. No, that's what love does. Ronan turned to face her fully. "I've been so afraid of loss that I forgot how to live. But you walked into my broken family and reminded me that feeling something doesn't make you weak, that love is worth the risk of pain." Ronan, he dropped to one knee. Amara's heart stopped. "I know this is insane," Ronan said. "I know we've only known each other 3 months. I know I'm a mess and my life is complicated and dangerous. But watching my father die taught me something. We don't have time to wait for the perfect moment. Life is short and brutal and absolutely precious." He pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, with a single diamond that caught the sunrise. "This was my mother's. Father gave it to me the week before he died, during a lucid moment. Said to give it to someone who reminded me how to be human." Ronan's voice shook. "Marry me, Amara. Not because it's logical or safe or smart, but because I love you. Because you saved me when I didn't even know I needed saving. Because I want to spend whatever time I have left making you happy." Amara looked at him. This complicated, damaged man who'd learned to feel again. Who'd fought his demons and won. Who was offering her a life she'd never imagined. She should have been smart. Should have considered the dangers, the complications, the reality that his world would never be completely safe. Instead, she said, "Yes." Ronan's smile was like sunrise. He slid the ring onto her finger, then stood and kissed her with a tenderness that made her forget everything except this moment. When they finally broke apart, both crying, he rested his forehead against hers. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For choosing me, even knowing what you know. I'll always choose you." They scattered the last of Jinsu's ashes together, mixing them with the soil where cherry blossoms would bloom every spring. A family reunited in death, their love continuing to grow. 3 months later, they married in the same garden. Small ceremony, just Jenna and a few close friends. Amara wore white, Ronan wore gray, and they spoke their vows in Korean, promising to love each other through darkness and light, through grief and joy, through everything life would throw at them. Saranghae, Ronan whispered as he kissed his bride. I love you. Nato Saranghae, Amara whispered back. I love you too. They returned to New York as husband and wife, ready to build something new from the ashes of the old. Ronan began the process of legitimizing the family business, using Lucas's plans as a blueprint. It was slow, dangerous work. Powerful people didn't like change, and some pushed back violently. But with Amara beside him, Ronan stood firm. 6 months into their marriage, Amara discovered she was pregnant. The news came during her clinical rotations at the hospital. Ironic that she'd find out the same way she'd met the Cades. She stared at the positive test, her mind reeling. A baby. Their baby. A new life built from two people who'd been broken and found each other anyway. She told Ronan that night over dinner. His reaction was everything. Shock, joy, terror, all flashing across his face in seconds before settling into wonder. We're having a baby, he said, like testing the words. We're having a baby. I don't know how to be a father. You'll learn. We both will. Amara took his hand, placing it on her still flat stomach. Together. The pregnancy was hard. Morning sickness that lasted all day, exhaustion that made medical school feel impossible, and a constant low-level anxiety that something would go wrong. But Ronan was there for all of it. He held her hair when she was sick, rubbed her feet when they swelled, read parenting books with the same intensity he'd once applied to hostile takeovers. Chapter 7 says we need to establish routines early, he said seriously one night. Ronan, the baby isn't even born yet. Preparation is key. Oh, she laughed, loving him more for his earnest worry. 8 months later, on a snowy February evening, their daughter was born. She came into the world screaming, all fury and life, with a full head of dark hair and eyes that would eventually turn the same ice blue as her father's. Ronan held her for the first time with hands that trembled, staring at her like she was a miracle he didn't deserve. She's perfect, he whispered. She is. Amara watched father and daughter with tears streaming down her face. What should we name her? They discussed names for months without agreeing, but looking at his daughter, Ronan knew. Sunmi, after my mother, and her middle name, Lily, after Lucas. He looked at Amara. If that's okay with you. It's perfect. Sunmi Lily Cade became the center of their universe. She grew fast, hitting milestones with the same determination her parents showed. By 6 months, she was babbling in 2 languages, Korean from Amara's bedtime songs and English from Ronan's business calls he took while holding her. Amara graduated medical school with honors, Sunmi in the audience wearing a tiny cap and gown that Ronan had custom made. The sight of her husband holding their daughter while applauding made everything, the sleepless nights, the impossible schedule, the years of struggle, worth it. She matched into pediatrics, choosing a specialty that would let her help children the way she'd once helped Jin-Soo. Full circle, she thought, from saving one dying man to dedicating her life to keeping children alive. Ronan completed the business transition over the next 2 years. It wasn't clean or simple. 3 attempts on his life, 2 legal battles, and 1 very public trial where he testified against former associates in exchange for immunity. But he survived. They survived. And slowly, painfully, the Cade Empire transformed from criminal enterprise to legitimate corporation. Your father would be proud, Amara said one night, watching Ronan review contracts for a new community center in Brooklyn. I hope so. This is what he and Lucas wanted, a legacy that builds instead of destroys. You're doing it. You're actually doing it. Ronan pulled her close, kissing her temple. We're doing it. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Sunmi's 2nd birthday fell on a perfect spring day. They celebrated in the garden in Seoul, cherry blossoms in full bloom, the memorial stones freshly cleaned. Halabeoji, Sunmi said, pointing at Jin-Soo's stone. Grandfather. That's right, baby. Amara lifted her daughter. That's your grandfather Jin-Soo. He loved you very much, even though he never got to meet you. And that's your grandmother Sun-Mi, Ronan added, pointing to his mother's stone. You're named after her. She was brave and kind, just like your mama. Sun-Mi touched the stone gently, like she understood its significance. That night, after Sunmi was asleep, Ronan and Amara stood on the balcony of their Seoul hotel, looking out over the city. 5 years ago, I was a different person, Ronan said. Empty, controlled by guilt, certain I'd die alone because I deserved it. And now? Now I'm a husband, a father, someone who builds instead of destroys. He turned to face her, his eyes reflecting the city lights. You did that. You saved me. We saved each other. No, I was drowning and you threw me a lifeline, even when I fought it, even when I was cruel and suspicious and impossible. Ronan cupped her face. I love you, Amara Cade. More than I thought I could love anything. I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. Good. Fear means you have something worth protecting. He kissed her softly. And I promise, whatever comes, whatever challenges we face, I'll protect our family with everything I am. I know you will. They stood there in the Seoul night, two people who'd been broken and found healing in each other, who'd built a family from grief and chosen love over fear. Behind them, the memorial stone stood silent witness. Three souls who'd loved fiercely and left too soon, but whose legacy lived on in the laughter of a little girl with her grandmother's name and her grandfather's stubborn determination. Jin-soo had asked Amara to save his son. She'd done that and more. She'd shown Ronan that humanity wasn't weakness, that feeling deeply was strength, that love could survive even in darkness. And Ronan had saved her right back. Given her the family she'd been searching for, the home she'd never known she needed, the courage to believe that broken people could still build beautiful lives. Years later, when Sunmi was old enough to understand, they would tell her the story about the night her mother saved a dying man in a restaurant, about her grandfather's wisdom and her uncle's sacrifice and her grandmother's fierce love, about how tragedy could transform into triumph if you were brave enough to feel it all. But for now, they stood together in the darkness, watching souls sleep below them, 3 souls in New York and 3 souls in this garden, all connected by the invisible threads of love that death could never break. Amara had come to the Cade family as a stranger, desperate for money and absolution. She'd stayed out of duty, fallen in love despite logic, and chosen to build a future from the ashes of the past. She wasn't a queen of the underworld, despite what the tabloids would later call her. She was something simpler and more profound. A woman who'd seen a man at his worst and loved him anyway. A mother who'd carry forward the legacy of people she'd never met. A doctor who understood that sometimes healing meant sitting with pain instead of running from it. The penthouse in Tribeca became a home filled with laughter instead of grief. The memorial garden in Seoul bloomed every spring, cherry blossoms falling like snow, marking where love had ended and where it continued. And through it all, Amara and Ronan stood side by side, no longer trapped in someone else's game, no longer controlled by guilt or fear, but masters of their own story. A story that began with death and ended with life. A story that proved love was always worth the risk. A story that would be told for generations, whispered between mother and daughter, father and son, passed down like the most precious inheritance. The story of how broken people became whole, how darkness found light, how a quiet waitress from Queens became the salvation of Manhattan's most dangerous family. Not through violence or power or control, but through the simplest, most radical act of all. She chose to care. And in caring, she changed everything.